Hi everybody, my name is Alex, and this is going to be the start of a series of videos where I talk about the performance of these poppet valves against the control bore length of barrels that I have. Specifically, they are all 0.682 inch bores. So the purpose of this video is to answer the question that we get a lot: what is the best barrel for a G6R? And this is more centered around control bore length and feet per second. When it comes to sound signature, that is not something that this particular study is going to look into. Very much focused on feet per second and control bore length. Some limitations that this experiment is going to have, and this is one of several that are going to happen, is limited sample size for the markers being used. We're just using my bastard ripper here, and we're not looking at standard cut G6Rs, and we're not looking at those really nice dragons and phoenixes and original run rippers that may or may not have been anodized several times and have had their tolerances change over time. Speaking of tolerances, there's a lot of tolerances that go into the size of dump chambers and how far a ram is hitting onto a poppet. And all of this is going, the limitation is it's centered on this marker right here. And of course, paint is not that great these days. It's not very round. I've done my best for the weather that I have to have Defy paintballs, which the shell's really hard, but it's actually fairly round and is as consistent as I can hope for in the current weather, in the current climate in Minnesota. So the agenda today is share technical details of the Corrado Poppet that we're evaluating today, specifically the black Corrado Performance Poppet, and explain why we're using a 679 Nova insert instead of a 682 when all of these other ones are 682. And then finally, we'll get into the conclusion. So taking a look at the barrels, the specific thing I wanted to call out is this testing will be done using the Nova Reaper. You know what? This is supposed to say 2.8 inches, right? I'll fix this on the next one. But I don't think anyone's actually going to go out there and buy a Nova Reaper Sport barrel to use on their G6R, but it's a good characterization tool to understand the short end of control bore versus the long end. And for all of these other barrels, they more or less measure exactly what their stamped diameter is. But in the case of the Nova Reaper Sport barrel, the 679 insert is our actual closest to 682 for what we're evaluating here. And taking a look at the poppets, we have the Corrado Performance Poppet that we're looking at today. It is an overall length of 1.290 inches with a weight of 2.625 grams. It is entirely aluminum with a Type 3 hard anodized coating to make it stand up to repeated stresses of being hit by the rammer. And as you can see, we have a few more that we'll be testing at a later date. Now, overall length is the easiest way to express the difference between a low pressure poppet and a high pressure poppet length. It is not the true measurement. The way you truly measure that is by going from the sealing surface to the tip of the stem. That's a hard measurement to take. I've done it, and it's not the simplest way to explain. I hope it doesn't come up ever again. So if you didn't believe me for the internal measurements of the barrels and barrel inserts here, the paintballs don't lie. Each one of these have a paintball in them, and it is an underbore. That's why we're testing for underbore at 682. We also had to find paint that would match it well. And there is a paintball at the bottom of this 682 insert that actually measures about 684, 685. So that is why we are actually using the Nova 679 insert. So the protocol here, let's see if I can get this video to play.
180 over 83 die barrel ULS.
70 degrees.
1,
Verify pressures.
2, 3,
30 40.
4,
Recondition
5,
for 5 minutes.
6,
and do everything
7,
the same day.
8, 9, 10.
Moving on. Taking a look at the results here, at a 2.8-inch control bore, we have a 259 feet per second average, and this is about 5% lower than our peak, which was on the Bob Long 5.8-inch control bore. Reminder that the Freak bore, which scored almost 264 feet per second, is a 5-inch control bore, and our ULS control bore is a 7-inch 7.0 control bore. And then to round that out, our Nano, which was using a 0.62 die insert ULI, is right at 259, right at tied with the Nova for 259 feet per second average. And if you take a look at this, um, there's a statistically significant difference between the Bob Long barrel and the Nano barrel. And there's statistically significant difference between the Bob Long and the Nova barrel, and that's about a 5% drop off in performance. Please note this scale starts at 240. It is zoomed in to exaggerate the difference between these barrels. So a conclusion for this mini study is that if you're exclusively considering a G6R with a Corrado Poppet, specifically the black one, there is no better barrel out there for you than the barrel that Bob gave you back in 2012. However, because its control bore is 5.8 and an AccuLock control bore is 6.75 and a ULS control bore is 7.0, you could reasonably assume that those three sets of barrels are statistically insignificantly different from each other, and all are good options depending on what you already have and what works for the rest of your other markers that you may have.